Thanks for joining me in another video about Skyrim with the Requiem overhaul. And today I want to talk about one of the core game mechanics that is altered by Requiem, and that's the fast travel system. So by default, fast travel is disabled for Requiem. You can re-enable it through the mod configuration menu, but by default, you would not be able to fast travel in the base game with Requiem. And I can see the logic behind this, because fast travel, in a sense, it doesn't make any sense that you can just jump magically, say, from Whiterun to the College of Winterhold without traversing any of this difficult and dangerous landscape in between. So I can see how, from an immersion and role-playing perspective, removing fast travel does make a lot of sense. I also find that for myself, fast travel can actually really ruin a game for me, because often where I quit a character is where I've got a full quest log and I'm just kind of jumping around trying to knock off items from the list. The Thieves Guild questline is particularly guilty of this in my experience. If you kind of get sucked down the rabbit hole of doing all the little side quests in order to become the guild master, well, they'll have you go and steal some item in Windhelm, and then you take it back to Riften, and then you change a ledger in a store in Whiterun, and you run back and turn in your quest at Riften, and then you go to Markarth and steal some item and go back to Riften, and pretty soon it just feels like you're being sent on errands. Your character kind of loses any sense of direction, and for me, I find that's often where I kind of lose interest, because any sense of urgency or immersion in the game is lost, because the world has the scope of it has become so reduced into just little dots you click on a map, as opposed to this huge diverse land of Skyrim, which you should be able to enjoy exploring. So in that sense, I think that fast travel it's sort of a problem for a role-playing game, because part of role-playing is having a sense of place, and that the people you're interacting with are located in that place, and that there are differences among them. And the problem is that playing without fast travel in Skyrim is almost impossible, because of just the way that Bethesda has designed many of the quest lines within the game. So, for example, the Agent of Mara quest, where you're supposed to go and help out 3 troubled couples to resolve their love life. It's a very wholesome little quest. So the first couple you're supposed to help is over in Ivarstead. Well, okay, the trek from Riften to Ivarstead, that's pretty reasonable. They're within the same hold, and this is actually kind of a fun little area to travel through and explore. There are lots of little bandit caves, there's castles that you can go through. This part down here I actually haven't explored yet, but there's some cool side quests that you can access by going down there. So, okay, great. You go to Ivarstead, you travel back to Riften. The second quest within Agent of Mara has you going all the way to Markarth to help out Kelselmo. Well, that's a pretty long walk. It's the exact opposite end of Skyrim. So are you supposed to go all the way to Markarth and then walk back to turn your quest in at Riften? And then the third quest has you going to the Plains of Whiterun to Jukar's monument to help out the third couple in transcending to the next life, or whatever it happens to be, and then going back to Riften. Well, one solution to this is you just do other quests along the way, or you combine the quests that you're already doing, and you're just like, well, when I eventually get to Markarth on my other travels, I'll turn in that quest with Kelselmo, no big deal. But then you kind of run into that same problem where you've got this jammed up quest log, and you're kind of going back into the errand boy routine, which is what ultimately kills a lot of playthroughs for me, because you kind of lost any sense of direction on your character, because as you travel, you're talking to people, you're picking up more and more and more quests. And personally, I find one of the most frustrating parts of Skyrim is when my quest log is filling up faster than I can do anything in it, because it doesn't feel like I'm actually making any progress. But okay, so that's just one example. That's the Agent of Mara quest, but the main quest line is also really guilty of this, and that's because of High Hrothgar. How many times do you really want to walk the 7,000 steps up to High Hrothgar? I mean, I first bought Skyrim for console, I played it a bunch there, then I bought it for PC, I played it a bunch there, and I don't know how many times I've walked to High Hrothgar, and after the first time, it just felt like a chore. Like, it's perhaps my least favorite part of the main quest is having to go up and see the graveyards, because this walk is just frustrating. There's practically nothing on it, and if you were to do it without fast travel, you'd be making that trip at least 4 times over the course of the main quest. I mean, first you get summoned by the graveyards, second you have to return the Horn of Jurgen Windcaller, third you have to go up to talk to Parthenax for the first time, then you have to go up again for the 4th time to go and fight Alduin. So that's a lot of walks up this mountain, which I just don't think is reasonable, and I don't think Bethesda ever expected that someone would actually want to walk the 7,000 steps 4 times in a single playthrough, especially if they've played the game more than once or twice. So that's the big problem for me, is that while I like the idea of having no fast travel for immersion reasons, in practical terms and gameplay, well, we all have limited time in which to enjoy our hobby of gaming. All of us probably have some other responsibilities in life, like jobs or school or families or what have you. And I want to use that time in a way that I find fun and action-packed, and spending that time walking does not fit that description. So fast travel in that sense is kind of a necessary evil, just because of the way that Bethesda has designed the game. But I do have a couple of suggestions or solutions that you can use to, while using fast travel, still keep a sense of immersion and direction about your character. The first way that I've tried in the past is I'll have a character that, say, maybe they have the goal of taking over the Whiterun area. So I'll say, okay, well, I'll fast travel to and from locations in the Whiterun Hold as I complete all these different areas that I might want to explore, but I'm not going to, for example, do a random fetch quest up to Winterhold, because that's just not in the area my character is interested in yet. And then after I've completed this area, maybe I'm saying, like, okay, now I want to take over the Falkreath area, so I'll allow myself fast travel among there so I can complete the quests in that region, but I'm not going to jump over to Markarth until I feel like my character is ready to start doing that. So, and you can come up with logical reasons within your roleplay why a character might think that that was the way that they wanted to tackle the province of Skyrim and solving its problems. The second way you can address the limitations of fast travel is to use a needs mod, so like a food or drink mod, because, well, fast travel does take time within the game world. So if you travel yourself from Riften over to Markarth, well, you're going to have to spend some gold on some food and drink when you get there. Otherwise, you're going to be pretty ineffective at actually fighting anything in that region. And just if you wanted to use the default Requiem settings, if your character happens to be a vampire, if you're fast traveling all over the place and you're not feeding, well, you're pretty soon going to be running into problems, because your vampire character is going to become very hungry and very ineffective in its abilities if you go without food for too long. So doing that kind of puts a implicit limit on how much you want to fast travel, because there's a direct cost to you in terms of gameplay. So that's another good solution to keep some immersion while also having some of the convenience of fast travel. It's just that it's not free anymore. The built-in mechanism that I think Requiem intended for solving the fast travel issue is that they buffed horses significantly. So horses are much faster. You can have them carry things for you. They're much better in Requiem than they were in the base game. Personally, I don't like that solution, because this is my personal opinion, but I really dislike the horse aspect of Skyrim in general. Like, it feels clunky to me. It's weird that horses can just ride straight up the side of mountains. It's like they completely ignore terrain, which is also pretty anti-immersive to me. And they cost 6,000 gold, which is a crazy amount to be gated out of actually getting around the map until you've saved up 6,000 gold. That can take an awfully long time unless you're going heavily into alchemy, which again is a system that I think is borderline exploitable through Requiem. So I'm not a fan of horses as a possible solution to the fast travel problem. The third way that I think you can resolve the fast travel issue is just, say, limiting yourself to traveling back to town, for example, or just putting some implicit limit. It's kind of like when you watch an action movie. You're the hero. You don't have to watch them walk down all the sets of stairs of their apartment building to get in their car to go to their next location. They just show them in the car, and then they're there, because we can kind of fill in the blanks for ourselves that that part of it was boring and we didn't need to watch it. So for example, I think it's perfectly reasonable to say, like, well, I'm going to walk to the location, but when it comes time to dump my loot, I'm going to fast travel back, because look, I'm in Green Spring Hollow. There's nothing to threaten me. I'm the king of this part of Whiterun. Nothing there is strong enough to threaten me, so I'm just going to jump back and save myself a walk. I think that can also be logical and immersive within your own personal roleplay. So where was I going with all this? I think that the intuition behind what the Requiem designers have done in leaving fast travel disabled by default is smart, because it gets people to think about traversing the world in a more organic way. But I'm glad that they leave it as optional, and the fact that you can choose to turn it off or on depending on what stage your character is in. Like, for example, maybe you decide that after your character has a horse, then it's okay for them to fast travel, because it's kind of like jumping in the car or the train. We just assume the horse got you there. We don't need to watch the whole process of you doing that travel. So I like that it is disabled by default and that you can turn it on, and I don't think they should change that in any way, because just by the way that Bethesda has designed Skyrim and some of the locations and some of the quest lines, it would be borderline unplayable to have no fast travel whatsoever. So those are my thoughts on the fast travel system in Requiem. The core of it is I like it as it is. I'm glad they did it in that way. And personally, I do all my playthroughs with fast travel enabled, and depending on the character, I'll often put some kind of limitation on it. But I'd be curious to hear what your experiences are, and if there are any people out there who go through entire playthroughs never using fast travel, I'd be really curious how you resolve some of these issues, and what you're doing to keep the game fresh, even when you're doing backtracking that I personally would find troubling, because I know there are people out there who do it with no fast travel, and if you're one of them, I'd be really interested to hear your perspective and what you enjoy about keeping the fast travel system disabled. At the end of the day, it's personal preference. I've just been talking about mine, but I hope you'll leave me some interesting feedback, and we can have a discussion about it. So thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next video.